I never imagined that hearing my husband's voice on the other side of the door would shatter everything I thought I knew about my life. That's how it began. Not with a scream, not with a fight, but with a quiet, terrible stillness. The kind of silence that presses against your chest and steals your breath, even as the world keeps moving around you. I was standing just outside our bedroom door, that rainy Thursday afternoon, clutching the lottery ticket in my hand like it was a secret too heavy to bear. $50 million. That's what the glossy slip of paper said. 50 million reasons for hope, for dreams, for everything to finally change. I was racing to tell Derek, my husband, the man I thought I'd built a life with. I imagined the surprise, the joy on his face. I pictured us holding each other, planning our future with new eyes. But instead, I heard voices. 2 voices. One was Derek's, calm and low, the way it usually was when he thought I wasn't listening. The other was a woman's soft, sly, too familiar. Isabella, his mistress. They were talking about divorce, about leaving me destitute, about a fake debt Derek had cooked up to ensure I'd have nothing. In that moment, the warmth of my victory turned cold, brittle, like ice cracking beneath my skin. Before the storm, there was the calm. Our house smelled like fresh coffee every morning. Derek always made it for me before rushing off to his office. Our son Leo would sit at the kitchen table, his small fingers tracing the wood grain as he asked me to fix his shoelaces or pour syrup on his pancakes. The sound of his laughter was the music that filled our home. I was a stay-at-home mom by choice, devoted to making our little world a safe, happy place. Derek was the breadwinner, proud of his work at the tech firm he had built from the ground up. He always seemed busy, but when he was home, he was present. Or so he believed. Our marriage wasn't perfect. We had arguments, like any couple. I sometimes felt like Derek didn't see me beyond the roles I played. Wife, mother, keeper of the home. But love? I thought it was there, somewhere beneath the surface. I spent hours planning Leo's school lunches, smoothing the wrinkles out of his shirts, waiting up for Derek's late-night texts, the ones that said, "On my way," or "miss you." I was convinced that, despite the exhaustion, we were holding it together. But cracks always show, if you look close enough. It started with small things: Derek coming home late without explanation, his phone tucked away like a secret treasure, the faint scent of unfamiliar perfume on his shirts, the way he'd sometimes stare off into space, distracted, distant. I told myself it was work stress. The market was tough, the company demanding. I nodded when he apologized for missing dinner. I smiled when he kissed my forehead before falling asleep. Then came the strange texts, the muted phone calls I caught him taking behind closed doors. A lunch meeting here, a business trip there. I chose to trust, because fear is a poison that can swallow you whole. One afternoon, I found a receipt from a restaurant I didn't know. It wasn't far from our house, but it wasn't somewhere we had ever gone. I pressed him gently, asking about it. Derek's jaw tightened, eyes flickering with something I couldn't place. "Just a work dinner," he said. "Nothing to worry about." But worry had already taken root. The day I overheard Derek and Isabella was a turning point. I remember the rain tapping against the window, the low hum of the heater in the background. I was pacing, rehearsing what I'd say when I told him about the lottery win. $50 million could change everything, I thought. We could finally breathe. Instead, I stopped dead outside the door, frozen by their words. Derek's voice was cold, clipped. "She can't know about the debt. It'll destroy her. I'm done, Isabella. The divorce papers are ready. Leo's custody will be mine if she signs the settlement." Isabella laughed softly, but it was a cruel sound. "You're sure she won't suspect anything? I've covered my tracks. The accountant's on my side. She'll be left with nothing but debt and no way to fight." The weight of their conversation crushed me. I pressed my hand against the wall, tasting the bitterness of betrayal like a bitter medicine. In that moment, I understood. The man I loved was gone, replaced by someone I didn't recognize. But beneath the shock, a new feeling blossomed in icy resolve. I didn't confront Derek. Not yet. I had a plan. First, I called my mother, Diane, a woman of quiet strength who taught me to fight with grace. Even when the odds were against me, I told her everything: the win, the betrayal, the danger lurking beneath Derek's charming facade. She didn't hesitate. "We'll do this your way. We'll keep the money safe, and we'll make sure Derek can't touch a penny." So Diane claimed the lottery prize in her name. It was the only way to shield the fortune from Derek's schemes. I played the part of the clueless wife, the heartbroken mother who would sign away everything just to keep Leo safe. The divorce was brutal. Derek's lawyers pressed for every cent, every asset. He accused me of being reckless, unstable. I kept my voice steady, my face calm, but inside, I was building a fortress. I signed the papers, Gave up my financial claims. It hurt, like losing a part of myself. But I held on to Leo, and that was everything. That night, after Leo was asleep, I sat in the quiet of my empty house and opened a file Diane had sent me, documents that didn't belong to Derek. Papers showing a secret financial empire of fraud and deceit. With the help of Margot, a sympathetic accountant who'd worked with Derek but had grown disillusioned, I pieced together the truth. Derek's business success was a lie, propped up by embezzlement and shady deals. The man who had tried to destroy me was himself a criminal. Armed with this knowledge and the hidden fortune Diane had kept safe, I began to plan the next move. The morning after I uncovered Derek's financial secrets, the house felt colder than usual, not because of the weather. The sun was streaming weakly through the curtains, but because the truth settled in the air like a thick fog, impossible to ignore. I brewed coffee and let the bitter steam fill my lungs. Leo was at school, his laughter echoing in the hallways of my memory, a reminder of everything I needed to protect. I felt a flicker of something I hadn't allowed myself in weeks. Hope. But hope was fragile. It needed a plan. I couldn't just sit and wait for Derek to ruin us both. I needed to fight back, but carefully, quietly. I reached out to Margot, the accountant. She was a quiet woman, unassuming at first glance, but inside she carried a fire that mirrored my own. "I've got more than enough to take him down," Margot said over the phone, voice low, tinged with exhaustion. "The fraud, the shell companies, the offshore accounts, it's all there. But you'll need to be smart. He's dangerous." I nodded, though she couldn't see me. "I'm ready." Margot became my secret ally, my guide into the dark corridors of Derek's lies. We met in cafes, whispered in corners, traded documents that could ruin a man. Meanwhile, I lived the part of the defeated wife, the woman who had lost everything except her son. I smiled at Leo, fixed his hair before school, hid the storm behind soft eyes. Derek's face, once familiar, became a mask of entitlement and anger whenever we crossed paths. His bitterness was a cloak he wore tightly, unaware that the woman he tried to break was quietly gathering strength. Derek's company was his empire, or so I thought, but it was more like a castle built on sand. With Diane's and my hidden funds, I made a bold move. I reached out to Julian Moss. Julian was Derek's ex-business partner, a man as ruthless as Derek, but with a score to settle. When I approached him with an offer to back a rival company, his eyes lit up, not with kindness, but with the sharp edge of vengeance. "Simone," Julian said the first time we met, voice rough like gravel. "You want to bring Derek down. I want to bury him. Let's do this right." Together, we laid the foundation for a new tech company. A legitimate, honest one, with the firepower to compete. Slowly, deliberately, we chipped away at Derek's market share. I watched from the sidelines as Derek's business began to crumble. He was forced to take desperate measures, borrowing from questionable lenders, alienating loyal clients. His empire was not unbreakable after all. The courtroom became our battleground. Derek sued me for half the lottery winnings, what he believed was rightfully his. I sat across from him, calm but resolute, while our lawyers traded barbed words. But I had an ace up my sleeve. The evidence Margot and I had gathered. Files proving Derek's fraud, his secret debts, his attempts to deceive the court. When the judge reviewed the documents, Derek's confident facade faltered. His lawyers scrambled, trying to dismiss the evidence as fabricated. But the truth was undeniable. The verdict was clear. Derek was guilty of financial crimes, and his claims to my winnings were dismissed. The next day, news broke about his arrest. The man who had betrayed me, who had planned to leave me destitute, was now behind bars. Sitting alone in my quiet house after the verdict, I finally allowed myself to breathe. Leo's laughter filled the rooms again, a reminder of why I fought so hard. I wasn't just a victim. I was a woman who had taken control of her life, who refused to be broken by betrayal. The money wasn't just a prize anymore, it was a symbol of resilience, a chance to build a future on my own terms. I started small. A new school for Leo, a counseling program for women escaping toxic relationships, a community center where strength could grow. Revenge had its place. Yes, but healing was the true victory. In the quiet moments after the storm, I found myself reflecting on the strange duality of life. How the same house that once held laughter and dreams had become a place of secrets and lies. And now, how it was becoming a space for new beginnings. Leo, with his messy hair and endless questions, was the light that kept me grounded. Every morning, I'd watch him eat his breakfast, the way he'd dip his toast into his tea, the way his fingers would twitch when he was excited about something at school. Simple moments, but profound reminders of what was truly worth fighting for. Evenings were the hardest. The silence of the house without Derek was deafening. No more hurried footsteps, no late-night arguments, no tension hanging in the air like a storm ready to break. I learned to fill that silence with music, with the soft hum of a vacuum, the smell of fresh flowers from the market, the rustle of pages as I read stories to Leo before bed. But peace wasn't something that came easily. Derek's bitterness lingered like a shadow. The man who once claimed to love me had tried to dismantle everything I held dear. I often wondered what had driven him to such darkness. Was it fear? Greed? Or the simple cruelty of someone who never truly understood love? Margot, who stayed by my side through it all, said once, "People like Derek don't change. But you're different. You've got a strength he'll never have." It was a comfort, and also a challenge. Because strength isn't about tearing others down, it's about building yourself up, brick by brick, with patience and grace. I channeled my energy into creating something meaningful. Using the fortune Diane had kept safe, I established a foundation dedicated to women and children who, like me, had faced betrayal and hardship. The foundation offered legal aid, counseling, and safe spaces. I wanted to make sure that no one else would feel as powerless as I once did. I also worked closely with Julian Moss, who had become an unlikely ally. Our rivalry with Derek had faded into something more complex, a shared understanding of what it meant to lose and to fight back. Leo, now a little older, often asked about Derek. "Mom, is Daddy coming home soon?" I'd kneel down, brush a stray curl from his forehead, and say gently, "Sometimes people have to learn their lessons. But you don't need to carry their burdens, my love." The scars of the past were still there, of course. I could feel them in the quiet moments, in the way my hands sometimes trembled when I thought no one was looking. But I refused to let those scars define me. Forgiveness was a complicated thing. Not because I wanted to forget, but because I needed to free myself from the weight of anger. I didn't forgive Derek for him. I did it for me. In the end, it wasn't about revenge or justice alone. It was about reclaiming my life, my dignity, and my future. One evening, as Leo slept, I sat by the window, watching the city lights twinkle like distant stars. I thought about everything I'd been through, the betrayal, the fight, the quiet moments of hope. I whispered a question to the night, a question I hope you'll think about too. If you found out someone you loved had betrayed you so deeply, what would you do to protect yourself and the ones you love? Would you have the courage to fight back? To find strength in the darkest of times? The day Derek was taken away in handcuffs, I stood at a distance, watching as the once powerful man was reduced to a shadow of himself. There was no satisfaction in that moment, only a quiet acknowledgement that justice had finally caught up. I didn't scream or celebrate. Instead, I felt a solemn weight lift from my shoulders, like the last chain had been broken. Leo, clutching my hand, looked up at me with wide eyes. "Mom, what happens now?" I smiled, even though the truth was still settling inside me. "Now, we rebuild. Together." The divorce had been a battlefield each day, a test of endurance. Derek's lawyers threw every accusation and threat they could muster, trying to shake my resolve. But I had something stronger. Truth, evidence, and the fierce love of a mother protecting her son. Signing away financial claims was one of the hardest decisions I made. It felt like losing a part of myself. But Leo's well-being was worth every sacrifice. When Derek accused me of manipulation in court, I held my head high. I didn't need to defend myself with anger or tears. My calm, measured voice spoke volumes. I am a mother first. Everything I have done has been for my son. Behind the scenes, Margot and I worked tirelessly to unravel Derek's web of deceit. Late nights spent poring over documents, cross-referencing transactions, and strategizing with lawyers. Margot's dedication was a lifeline. She believed in justice, in truth, and in the idea that even the most broken systems could be repaired. One evening, she looked at me with tired eyes but a hopeful smile. "We're close. The evidence is solid. Soon, Derek won't be able to hide." That hope was the fire that kept me going. At the same time, my alliance with Julian Moss took on a life of its own. What started as a mutual desire to bring Derek down became a partnership built on respect. Julian was a complicated man, ambitious, scarred by his own past betrayals. But beneath the surface, I saw a man who understood the cost of power and the price of greed. Together, we built a company founded on integrity and innovation. We offered an alternative to Derek's corrupted empire. Slowly, the market shifted. Clients and partners moved toward us, drawn by transparency and trust. Derek's empire began to crumble, brick by brick. I remember the day Derek called me, his voice raw and desperate. He pleaded for a settlement, for mercy. But I was done with mercy. I told him firmly, justice isn't about mercy. It's about accountability. The courtroom was the final stage. I sat quietly, watching as the evidence unfolded proof of fraud, deceit, and attempts to destroy me. Derek's confident mask shattered under the weight of truth. When the judge ruled against him, and the media caught wind of the verdict, I felt a strange mixture of relief and sadness. This man, who once promised to love me, had chosen a different path. Life after the storm was not perfect. Healing takes time, and scars don't disappear overnight. But every day, I woke up with a little more strength. I rebuilt my life not on bitterness, but on hope. I built a future for Leo that was safe, loving, and full of possibilities. I built a legacy not just of wealth, but of resilience. The mornings after Derek's arrest felt surreal. The house was quieter now, but not empty. Leo's footsteps echoed in the halls, a steady rhythm reminding me that life goes on, sometimes fragile, sometimes fierce. I found myself waking earlier, drawn to the kitchen window where the first light of dawn spilled over the city skyline. The world felt vast and full of possibility, even if my own heart still carried the bruises of betrayal. Revenge had been a tempting fire, a way to channel the pain, the anger, the loss. But as the days passed, I realized it wasn't enough. It didn't fill the void left by broken trust or soothe the nights when loneliness crept in. Instead, I turned my focus to something larger than myself. The foundation Diane and I started began taking shape, a place for women and children who needed a second chance. We worked with counselors, lawyers, and volunteers to create safe spaces. I met women whose stories mirrored my own stories, of love twisted into control, of dreams shattered by deceit. Their strength inspired me. Their hope fueled my own. Leo grew with a resilience I admired. He was curious, kind, and brave, qualities I nurtured every day. One afternoon, as we walked through the park, he tugged on my hand and asked, "Mom, will Daddy be okay?" I looked at him, trying to find words gentle enough for his age, but truthful enough to respect his feelings. "Sometimes, people have to face consequences for their choices," I said softly. "But you don't have to carry that weight." He nodded, then looked up at the sky. "I just want us to be happy." And that was the truth. I held on to the promise of happiness, not tied to anyone else's mistakes or regrets. There were moments of doubt, too. Nights when the silence was too loud, when the memories threatened to pull me back into despair. But each time, I found a way forward. I leaned on friends, on my mother, on Margot, people who reminded me that I was more than the pain I endured. And slowly, the anger softened into acceptance. Derek's presence faded from my life like a bad dream. His attempts to claw back power were futile. The courts, the media, the business world, they all saw the truth. He was a man who lost everything because he chose deceit over love. And I was a woman who chose to rise. I sometimes wonder what Derek thinks when he's alone in that cold cell. Does he regret the choices he made? Does he see the strength he tried to destroy? Maybe. Maybe not. But it no longer matters to me. I'm rebuilding, day by day. Leo's laughter fills our home again. The scent of fresh coffee lingers in the mornings, and the future stretches wide open. The wounds remain, but they are part of the story, not the whole story. The day Derek's downfall became public was one I'll never forget. The courthouse steps were crowded with reporters, cameras flashing like lightning in a storm. I kept Leo close, shielding him from the noise and the flashing lights. I felt a mix of emotions, vindication, relief, and a strange emptiness. This was the end of a chapter written in betrayal and pain, but also the beginning of something new. Margot stood beside me, her quiet strength a comfort in the chaos. Julian Moss was there too, his presence a reminder that sometimes allies come from the most unexpected places. The headline screamed, "Local tech mogul arrested for fraud, wife wins $50 million lottery amidst divorce drama." I didn't feel like celebrating. Instead, I focused on the future, on what I could build, not what had been destroyed. Friends and family rallied around me. Diane was my rock, reminding me that strength comes in many forms. She held Leo while I navigated the storm of legal battles, media scrutiny, and the complicated emotions that followed. Some people whispered behind my back, questioning my silence during the divorce, my decision to play the clueless wife. But I knew the truth. Sometimes survival means patience, and the greatest power is knowing when to hold your cards close. Community members reached out, inspired by the foundation we started. Women who had faced abuse, neglect, or betrayal found a place to heal. One woman, Sarah, told me her story over tea one afternoon. She spoke quietly but with fierce determination. "You showed me it's possible to fight back," she said. "Not just for money or revenge, but for dignity." Her words stayed with me, a reminder that my journey wasn't just about me. Meanwhile, Derek's reputation crumbled like a house of cards. Former clients distanced themselves. Partners severed ties. His name became synonymous with scandal. He fought bitterly from behind bars, suing for what he thought was owed. But the court saw through his lies. In one of the final hearings, I watched as his defense faltered, the truth cutting through every claim like a knife. When the judge ruled decisively against him, I felt a quiet sense of justice, not triumph. Through it all, Leo remained my guiding light. He asked questions sometimes, his small brow furrowed in confusion or sadness. "Why did Daddy do those things?" he asked once. I took his hand, looking into his eyes. "Sometimes, people make bad choices, but we don't have to let those choices define us." He nodded slowly, a wisdom beyond his years. Life after Derek was still filled with challenges. Healing isn't linear, and peace doesn't arrive overnight. But with every step, I grew stronger. I learned that power isn't just about money or control, it's about owning your story and finding peace within it. Rebuilding wasn't easy. It was a slow, sometimes painful process of finding myself again after years of living in the shadows of Derek's lies. The house, once filled with silence and suspicion, now buzzed with new energy, Leo's laughter, the hum of friends visiting, the quiet rustle of papers as I worked on the Foundation's programs. Each day, I reminded myself why I fought so hard, not for revenge, but for freedom. Freedom to live without fear, to love without doubt, and to build a future rooted in truth. The Foundation grew into more than just a project. It became a mission. We helped women escape toxic relationships, gave children safe spaces to learn and play, and offered legal support to those who couldn't afford it. One afternoon, as I toured the new community center, a woman approached me quietly. "Thank you," she said, eyes shining. "You saved my life." I held back tears. That moment, more than any court victory or lottery win, felt like true justice. I also found peace in unexpected places. Julian Moss, once Derek's fiercest rival, became a friend. Our shared experience created a bond rooted in resilience rather than bitterness. He reminded me that strength often comes from collaboration, not conflict. Together, we worked to ensure Derek's downfall was not just about punishment, but about rebuilding a community where honesty and respect could thrive. Leo thrived. Watching him grow into a kind, curious boy was the greatest gift. He learned to trust again, to love fully, and to believe in the power of second chances. One evening, as we sat on the porch watching the sunset, he said softly, "Mom, I'm proud of you." Those words, simple but profound, reminded me of how far we'd come. Forgiveness was the final lesson, not because Derek deserved it, but because I needed it for myself. I forgave the man who broke my trust, not to absolve him, but to release myself from the chains of bitterness. It was a quiet choice, made in the stillness of the night, a surrender to peace over pain. Life moves forward. I won't pretend the scars aren't there, but they don't define me. I am more than the betrayal I survived. I am a mother, a fighter, and a woman who reclaimed her life. And as I watch Leo sleep, I know that the future is ours to write. Thank you for listening to my story. The story of how a woman betrayed found strength in the shadows and reclaimed her life from the ashes of deceit. Life isn't always fair. People we love can hurt us deeply, sometimes in ways we never imagined. But within each of us lies a resilience that can turn pain into power, betrayal into a lesson. I want to leave you with this question. If you were standing at the crossroads of heartbreak and hope, which path would you choose? Would you let betrayal break you? Or would you find the courage to rise, rebuild, and reclaim your story? This isn't just my story. It's the story of so many women who face injustice quietly, who fight battles behind closed doors, who dare to hope for a better tomorrow. If my journey has touched you, if it has sparked a flicker of strength or a moment of reflection, I invite you to share your thoughts. Tell me, what would you have done in my place? How have you found strength when life felt like it was tearing you apart? Please subscribe if you want to hear more stories of real people facing real struggles with courage and grace. Together, we can create a space where voices are heard, where stories heal, and where no one has to face their battles alone. Remember, strength isn't about never falling, it's about getting up, every time, with your heart still open. Until next time, take care of yourself and each other.